For countless millennia, we've gathered to wonder about the night sky. Now you can bring home the universe with Starry Night software from space.com. Explore planets and galaxies, discover asteroids and comets, and reach for the stars. Starry Night is easy to use. Your desktop computer becomes a powerful time machine and starship, journeying 20,000 light years into space. And Starry Night is now available at Best Buy, Electronics Boutique, and COP USA stores. Be there for sunrise on Saturn. Investigate new worlds that could be home to extraterrestrial life. Become an instant astronomer with or without a telescope. You'll see something amazing every time you launch. Popular Science says it's the closest you can come to space travel without a heavy suit and a lot of training. Starry Night, bring home the universe. It's a perfect gift for intelligent life.
If your hair is thinning, call 1-800-HAIR-CLUB now for this free booklet. The Hair Loss Resource Center, giving you the information you need to make an educated decision on hair loss. Whether you're just starting to thin or experiencing advanced hair loss, Hair Club has an option that's right for you. Hair Club, the answers you've been waiting for.
I see your house doesn't have the Sloman Shield. Aren't you scared?
Getting scared?
What's the Sloman Shield?
An advanced home security system installed free, guaranteed. Call 1-800-ALARM-ME.
Burglars pass by the Sloman Shield?
Wouldn't you? Knowing your family's protected by the Sloman Shield?
I'm not scared anymore.
What's the number?
1-800-ALARM-ME.
Installed free. Call 1-800-ALARM-ME. The Sloman Shield.
Shield your home. The Sloman Shield.
I was 5 when I first got diabetes, and I've taken over 6,500 shots. Everybody thinks you can get used to that, but you never get used to it.
But there is hope. It's called research. The Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation has taken us within walking distance of a cure. Please join us for our Walk to Cure Diabetes. For more information, call 1-888-533-WALK.
Information Center on CNBC. Information you need to get back to business, including logistics on transportation to the financial district, security and safety procedures, public health information, employee notices, and live phone and email question response. Sunday, 4 to 8 p.m. Eastern on CNBC.
Been breaking our hearts all day long. I'm sure you have been brought to tears as often as I have. Just a dozen, we're just looking at a dozen or so of the thousands of people still missing in the World Trade Center. NBC's Monica Novotny joins us now from an armory at 26th Street and Lexington Avenue in Manhattan, where several thousand people stood in line today waiting to complete missing persons reports. Monica, are you there?
Geraldo, it has been an incredibly difficult day here. As you said, so many people lining up. They're coming here, they want to check the patient lists. Those are lists that are far too short. They then have to go about filing the missing persons report, and this is the time when all of those personal details of their loved ones become pieces of a puzzle, really, for the detectives and the investigators to piece together in this horrible, horrible puzzle. Everybody here has a story, Geraldo. In some sense, the stories are similar. People who are coming out, they're saying, I'm out here because there's nothing else that I can do. I have to do this. I can't not be here. I can't sit at home. I can't watch this on television or listen to the radio anymore. I can't pick up the phone because the phone keeps ringing. People want to know. And so I come here and I bring the pictures, and these are the pictures. You've seen these, I'm sure, the flyers, the pictures of all of these people. There are stacks of them. In addition, they're also mounted on the walls all along the buildings here. There was a candlelight vigil before. I don't know if you heard about this, but this happened around 7 p.m. Eastern time. Folks here told me that it was actually thanks to an email, a mass email that went out. People aren't sure who started it or where. But they said that the email said go out at 7 o'clock with a candle. So people in this neighborhood chose to come here, knowing that the Armory and the family members were here. They came out with the candles, and it was chilling. It was really an incredible moment of community support for all the people who are going through a difficult time.
That solves the soul perhaps a bit, Monica, but as a professional reporter, knowing that the chances are so grim that these desperate hope against hopes will be realized, what's it like to look these people in the eye and listen to their stories and to hold up their folders, their posters, and repeat their numbers on the air? I mean, what's it like?
It's definitely one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I think that when I talk to people, I've told them that we've been around town covering this story, and when I mentioned that we were downtown yesterday, the first thing they want to know is, what do you think? If you've seen it, you've been close to it, is there a chance? Is there a chance? And of course, everybody wants to be hopeful. I'm certainly hopeful. We all know that in tragedies like this, there are always those miracle stories. We've had a few already. But at the same time, you don't want to give false hope, because this is so incredibly devastating for the country, and we all seem to know someone. I know some people, and so I feel for them, and this is incredibly hard, and we just, the only thing that helps is that a lot of the people come to us and they have these photos and they say, please, please, can I come and talk to you? I want to show the photo on the air.
Go ahead, show a couple what you have in your
And they
hands.
thank you. Yeah, let me show you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
This guy, Joe, this was his roommate, is going out on behalf of the family and bringing Joe's picture around. I want to show you this young woman, Melissa. This was a tough one to talk to her dad. Melissa's my age, and so I certainly felt for her dad. He was desperate for any information. All they know about Melissa is that she gave a 911 call after the first plane hit the building, and they just want to know whether she was in the building or whether she was outside the building. So they're working with the FBI on the contents of that phone call, but they don't know that yet. This gentleman, Tony, his partner, is looking for him. He and his partner have an apartment downtown, just 3 blocks from the World Trade Center. Tony left at 8:34. His partner said it's a 10-minute walk for him to get all the way up to his office. Right around right around that 10-minute point later, when the first plane hit, his partner was in the apartment. He was fiddling with the blinds, he said, and he looked up knowing that his partner was on the 92nd floor of that building and watched the plane hit that building. And he just said words could not describe the feeling.
It's more than...
It's chilling.
More than we can bear, ladies and gentlemen. I got a call today from a buddy of mine who works down there, and he said he heard that CNBC heard that there were voices coming from the wreckage, and I said, mate, I'm so sorry to tell you that's just not, it's just not so. There's no voices. There's no knocking. Stay tuned. One more hour. Stay tuned, please.
And counting. The new 210 horsepower supercharged Nissan Xterra. Still everything you need, nothing you don't.
Attention, Carnival has just announced incredible savings on cruises to the Caribbean. Now you can cruise for a great price or from as little as $14 a month. Stay tuned. A fabulous, relaxing, fun-filled Carnival cruise makes a great vacation, and the vacation store is the best way to get there. Today's Carnival is taking fun ship cruising to a whole new level. There are more choices, more pampering, and just more fun. Enjoy staterooms that are on average 50% larger than other cruise lines. Plus, fabulous food, dazzling entertainment, exotic ports of call, and it's all included in one low price. In fact, right now you can enjoy an amazing 7-day tropical vacation at a truly incredible rate. The brochure price for these cruises starts at $13.49 per person, but only through this special TV offer, you can enjoy 7 sunny days in the Caribbean from as little as $5.99 per person. That's over half off the regular price. You won't find a better offer. We guarantee it. And if you call now, you'll receive an extra $50 off the price of your stateroom, a double upgrade on selected sailings, and a Carnival camera. That's a bonus value worth up to $200. Free when you book today. And now it's even easier to enjoy a fun ship cruise with Carnival's Fun Finance Plan. Take a 3-day cruise from as little as $14 a month, or enjoy a 7-day cruise from as little as $28 a month. A great vacation has never been more affordable. So call now for details, or you can check out our website at thevacationstore.com. You can even book online. The Vacation Store offers an exclusive best price guarantee. If you find a lower price on the identical Carnival cruise within 14 days of booking with us, we'll refund the difference. 3 to 17-day cruises are available, all backed by our best price guarantee. Just imagine all the excitement, fabulous fun, brilliant sun, exciting ports, and sensational food, all for one low price. Or choose to cruise from as little as $14 a month. So call 1-800-361-2747 or visit thevacationstore.com. You deserve the vacation of a lifetime. Call 1-800-361-2747. Then let the fun begin.
The home of the Senior PGA Tour, CNBC.
Welcome back, everybody. Second hour, a special edition of Rivera Live. Caused as much by the power outage in New York as by our fervent desire to keep you abreast of the very latest in this story. I know so many of you have just been glued to your television sets since this travesty, this tragedy, this disaster occurred early Tuesday morning in New York City and Washington, D.C. One thing becomes very clear. The president, as you know, has now requested up to 50,000 military reservists to be activated. The Congress of the United States has now granted the President George W. Bush extraordinary powers that the leaders of the Senate and House today compared to a constitutional declaration of war. Powers that would enable him essentially to wage war against those felt to be responsible. And even at this late date, still all the evidence points to the master assassin, the man who devastatingly wrought such disaster to our 2 embassies in Africa, Osama bin Laden. We are told now that some of the terrorists who were apprehended in that case and in the attempt to bomb Los Angeles during the millennial celebrations are cooperating with the authorities. We know that the military is looking very closely at taking massive action in Afghanistan, where the revolutionary fundamentalist Taliban government is suspected of harboring this master assassin. But going after him, as Andrea Mitchell now reports, will not be easy. Here's Andrea Mitchell.
He's known as the contractor, the head of a loose-knit confederation of terror groups, dispatching operatives around the world. A master of media manipulation, he first stages high-profile interviews to threaten the U.S., then strikes his targets, and immediately moves to the next tent, mud hut or cave, disappearing from view and very well protected.
He has been able to get a physical security detail that is second to none in terms of being alert to any type of potentially hostile forces that would come within 150 miles of his base.
Until 3 years ago, he used satellite phones, not knowing that the super-secret National Security Agency was listening in. But officials say after a newspaper reported the intercepts, bin Laden turned to encrypted internet communications, or couriers carrying zip drives, making him that much harder to find.
The geography of Afghanistan has 1 million places that people can hide and not be detected. It's a very rough and rugged country, mountainous and desert, and very few population centers whatsoever.
And bin Laden is rich, inherited a $300 million fortune, which he uses to finance Afghanistan's Taliban rulers. The U.S. says in return they give him complete protection. And with each attack, he picks up more supporters, replenishing his cash.
Series of attacks has actually made it easier for bin Laden to raise money either from wealthy radical sheikhs on the Arabian Peninsula or even from poor but like-minded believers.
Why are his soldiers so loyal? Many served under him more than 10 years ago when he helped Afghanistan fight the Russians. His ally then, the U.S.
There's no doubt in my mind that at one point or another we probably armed him. But indirectly, I was training the people who today are terrorists.
The challenge now, building a coalition of his neighbors to isolate bin Laden. Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and most important, pressuring Afghan leaders to turn him over.
Andrea Mitchell, thank you very much. We're joined now by Jim Miklashevsky, from the Pentagon. Jim, tell me how the buildup or the call-up of the reserves, the up to 50,000, compares to the early days of the mobilization for the Persian Gulf War. Does it give you any indication of just how big the buildup, the mobilization will be?
It really does, because what the president did today in ordering the call-up is there are actually 3 choices for the president to make when he does these call-ups. He went for what is called the limited mobilization, which allows the president to call up reserve troops for up to 2 years and up to 1 million armed forces. During the Gulf War, his father, President Bush, called up 265,000 troops to fight Desert Storm. So President Bush today has the same option under the limited mobilization to call up many more troops, up to 50,000 in this first wave, 35,000 in the first actual rollout, but he has the option to go much higher than that, and people here in the building think it won't stop at just this 50,000.
Jim, during the call-up during the Persian Gulf War of the reservists and the National Guard, it was not smooth. I mean, certain units performed with distinction, many others, there were many mini scandals, let me say, lots of controversy. What is the state? We've heard so much about military readiness and preparedness. What is the state right now of our reserve forces?
Well, the reserve forces that are going to be used in this initial call-up, Geraldo, will be used for homeland defenses. And what that means primarily is that some of them will be involved in the cleanup and recovery effort there in New York City. Others will be involved in flying these combat air covers or supporting the mission to fly combat air covers. They continue tonight, 24 hours around the clock, combat air cover over New York City and Washington, D.C. There are pilots and planes sitting at the ready on strip alert at 26 military bases around the country. So it's thought that they can pretty much handle that. Now, if they get into a situation where reserve troops are called up during an actual deployment, most of those reserve troops will first backfill those regular armed forces that will be called up and deployed to the Persian Gulf, the Afghanistan region. So they don't see a problem there. It's when and if this operation that they're talking about drags on and these reserve forces are called out into the field that there could be some problems. But that's very much down the road, but it's going to be a long road to everybody that we talk to.
One thing Dr. Bob Arnott mentioned in the first hour of tonight's program, Jim, was the fact that one of these planes, one of the planes that impacted on the Twin Towers, came within 4 minutes flight time of a National Air Guard base. Is it reasonable to assume that the same scenario will not be allowed to happen again, that if there is indeed a commercial airliner that appears to be out of the control of the crew, that the military will scramble an F-16 or whatever to intercept?
Well, what's clear is that they'll be able to scramble. I mean, in this case, I mean, one can only imagine, I mean, I'm sure you can recall sitting there looking at the pictures. They were totally unbelievable. It was incomprehensible to know what was going on. Now, after that first impact into the tower, people in air control, civilian air control towers notified the military. There's actually a procedure under which it's a NORAD response, really, for homeland defenses. And they were able to scramble those jets, but too late, obviously, to intercept that second plane. That won't happen this time, because there will be planes either in the air or ready to respond within 5 to 15 minutes. The problem is, what do you do once you get the plane in the air? Do you shoot it down if it's over a populated area? Or do you try to divert it, escort it? One method actually is to fly these fighter planes up underneath it and try to destabilize the plane and force it unfortunately to crash. But that's good. Can you imagine the decision that a pilot's going to have to make if he's looking at a plane load full of civilians and knowing that he has to pull the trigger?
After investigating the shoot-down in the Amazon of the Bowers family, I cannot imagine that we're going to be awfully quick on the trigger. It's a horrible scenario. Jim Miklashevsky, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much. We're joined now by Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, we ran your piece on the elusive Osama bin Laden just a couple of minutes before you joined us live. Is there any indication now that, you know, a list aside from NATO and our traditional allies of any of the marginal countries falling in line behind President Bush?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Geraldo, because you're not going to believe this, but Iran is one possibility. They have actually been in touch with Iran informally because of Iran's hostility to Afghanistan and the continuing rebellion in the northern part of Afghanistan against the Taliban rule, supported by Iran. And there is the possibility of some sort of informal networking with countries like Iran. Russia, very interested in marshaling forces and in joining with the United States against Afghanistan. So I think you're going to see some unusual coalition building, and that's exactly what Colin Powell is trying to do. It's a new world in diplomacy as well as in military action in this commitment to have a sustained global effort against terror.
I can see Russia having an axe to grind after being thrown out of Afghanistan, suffering such horrible casualties there. But Iran, how trustworthy would they be if they are indeed, as Israel and our own previous intelligence suggests, a hotbed of terrorism?
Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Iran, hostile to Afghanistan. Iraq, hostile to Iran. Still suspicions, people like Jim Woolsey, former CIA director, feel that Iraq had some role in this, in helping bin Laden, that these are loose confederations. That has not been proved to the satisfaction of our intelligence community at all. In fact, they don't accept that scenario. But there's a lot of uncertainty out here and not any real hard evidence. What they do believe is that bin Laden is the principal mastermind of this, if you will, that he allies himself and avails himself of other groups that either report to him or are in league with him or share communications with him. But that bin Laden is the one they're after. But they want to take this opportunity to mount the kind of attack on terrorism that has never been seen before. This is not a pinprick kind of thing or a quick strike, an airstrike or a cruise missile strike against a cave in which he's no longer living or a training camp that he left 3 days ago. This is going to be a very big deal.
Closer to home, what was it like at the service today at the National Cathedral? You know, I know you've been to other state functions, some of them even the memorial services. Was this different?
This was very different, and full disclosure, I was only there as a spouse because it was really a service for government officials. And I have not seen Washington in this mode very often, because even when it is a funeral service in the cathedral, there are joyful moments in someone's life to be celebrated. But this was really a gathering of people who felt humbled and powerless, just as powerless as the people, the rest of America, in the face of such horror. And so it was really up to Billy Graham, who in his sermon said that he really doesn't have an answer to how a loving God could permit this kind of thing to happen. And
Andrea, I have to interrupt. I'm so sorry. Pete Williams joins us right now. He's got a break in the investigation. Just stand by if you would. Pete, what do you got?
Good evening, Geraldo. We're told now by senior federal officials that what they consider their best lead in this investigation so far turns out to be a lead that has been simmering on the back burner since Wednesday, when two men were arrested on an Amtrak train. Those two men, after being questioned for some extent in Texas, are now on their way to New York for further questioning. And we're told by senior government officials tonight that they consider these two to have intimate knowledge of the terror network. Now, who are they? We're told that these two, on the day of the suicide flights, got onto an airplane out of Newark that was going to fly to San Antonio, Texas. However, before the plane could get to San Antonio, the FAA grounded all flights. Every flight had to land at the nearest airport, and this particular plane landed at St. Louis. So the two men get off the plane and get onto an Amtrak train bound for San Antonio, Texas. However, we are told they got into an argument on the train, and drug enforcement agents were summoned who thought that possibly they might be involved with drugs because they were carrying a large amount of cash. Then it was discovered they had cardboard or box cutters. similar to the kind that were used, we're told, to threaten passengers on the planes that were the suicide flights. So they were held on immigration charges. Now we're told they're being held as material witnesses and on their way to New York. And officials say that these two may have intimate knowledge of the terrorist organizations. Now, their names have been public for the last few days, Geraldo. Ayub Ali Khan, who's 51, and Mohammed Jaweed Azmath, who's 47, now considered to be potentially much more important witnesses and on their way to talk to the FBI in New York. A couple of other quick things that are new tonight, Geraldo. We now know that the material witness arrest that we heard about earlier is one of those people involved in the New York confusion last night, the alarm that caused the 3 New York airports to be closed down, JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark. This is a man who had identification that the authorities couldn't quite square. They interviewed him for a while. He seemed very reluctant to talk to them. They think he may know more, so they're holding him on a material witness warrant. And finally, we're told good information coming out of a computer seized today, from, they believe, the residence that one of the hijackers used. Good information about the plans for last Tuesday's hijacking, but we're told that computer contained no information about possible other attacks. And I suppose I should mention, because it's gotten some attention elsewhere, there's been talk that the FBI had heard a witness say that there were attacks planned for Atlanta and for Richmond, Virginia. A senior government official tells us tonight they have completely ruled those out. They intensely pursued them, informed out of an abundance of caution officials in those two communities, but now they're convinced there's nothing to them, Geraldo.
So, Pete, a brief summary. 3 then being held as material witnesses, 2 of the 3 taken from this Amtrak train between St. Louis and San Antonio, and they seem like hot ones.
Indeed so. Well said.
Okay, so were they also, any word on whether or not they had any flight training? Were they operatives or were they support staff? Any indication, or just associates?
Well, that is the key question, and that's why they're being sent to New York. We've heard nothing about any of them having flight training. I think that's beyond the knowledge of the FBI right now, and that's why they're so eager to talk to them. But they think it's more than just coincidence. They feel at this point they're very interested in pursuing them because they believe they have information related to this terrorist organization.
What about these 2 arrests last night, or detainments in Hamburg, Germany? Any word on what that panned out to be?
Not much. They've released one of those people. You know, one of the things they're doing is just descending upon anyone who shares a common address with any of these hijackers. Now, you know, people move frequently. Sometimes the address where you live could be the address where somebody else lived last week that is of interest to investigators. You're completely innocent. That's apparently the situation with one of the arrests in Germany.
Everybody cleared in the Boston detainments, Pete, and the Amtrak train being stopped near Providence?
Yes, you know, that got a lot of attention at the time, but we were told by investigators that that was not stopped at the request of the FBI and that had nothing to do with the investigation. And,
okay.
And I guess you mean by the Boston, the 3 people picked up in the hotel?
Right.
Yes, they were quickly ruled out, quickly released.
Okay, so would you still characterize the investigation as progressing rapidly, Pete?
Amazingly so. Now, part of it is just, you know, consider this. They know the names of 19 hijackers. That immediately opens up a huge number of leads, because here's what you do. You take each hijacker, you seize their phone records, you get their bank records, you look at every person they ever made a telephone call to, you check all those leads out. Any person they ever wrote a check to, you check all of that out. Did they ever make a credit card purchase with anyone? We know that, for example, 3 hotel rooms were rented on 1 credit card. That raises suspicions. You know, you take all of those things for which people leave a trail, multiply that by 18 hijackers, and you have a large number of leads to check out. And then, of course, you look at addresses that these people, any place they ever lived, people that were in the flight schools with them, people that may have traveled with them, and you begin to get this incredible number of leads, not to mention the tens of thousands of tips that have come into the FBI from its website and its telephone tip line.
Pete Williams, thanks. Excellent job, Pete.
Yes,
thanks
sir. Thank you.
Thanks for the update. Let me take a quick break. I'll ask our fine panel for response to these latest developments. We're going until 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Doobie Brothers' greatest hits. This first and only complete career retrospective features 30 years of Doobie Brothers hits on one CD or one cassette. The Doobie Brothers' greatest hits features all of the good time tunes you'll never forget, including Listen to the Music and the #1 hits Blackwater.
I like to hear some funky Dixieland, pretty mama, come and take me by the
And What a Fool Believes. The Doobie Brothers' greatest hits. 20 essential tracks on one album. Just $18.98 CD or $15.98 cassette. The Doobie Brothers' greatest hits also features classic hits like China Grove, Minute by Minute, Long Train Runnin', Rockin' Down the Highway, Take Me in Your Arms, Rock Me, The Doctor, Real Love. Taking It to the Streets, and many more huge rock hits. Order the Doobie Brothers' greatest hits now. Listen to the music one more time. All of the mega rock hits you still hear on the radio are on the Doobie Brothers' greatest hits. To order the Doobie Brothers' greatest hits, call the number on your screen or send $18.98 CD or $15.98 cassette plus $4.95 shipping and handling to the address shown. Call now. Rush delivery available.
The Market Reopening Information Center on CNBC. Information you need to get back to business, including logistics on transportation to the financial district, security and safety procedures, public health information, employee notices, and live phone and email question response. Sunday, 4 to 8 p.m. Eastern on CNBC.
Go right to Dr. Bob Arnott. How big a blow to the investigation, Dr. Bob, is the fact that the voice data recorder of the plane that impacted the Pentagon was apparently damaged so severely that there was no retrievable data, so we won't hear whatever happened in that cockpit?
Well, you know, Geraldo, the real thing that's going to be missing is exactly what the changeover point was between the flight crew and the hijackers.
Right, right.
Because, you know, what's interesting here is that the flight management system on these airplanes is the most difficult thing. Flying one of these planes is the kind of thing you can do if you had basic rudimentary flight training. In fact, I bought a flight training program the other day that would take someone who was a, you know, decent amateur pilot and turn them into a pretty good 767 pilot for flying straight and level or up and down a little bit and hitting a building. But, you know, how far along did they really rely on the pilots to take them? Probably a fair distance in. I don't think, though, in terms of the investigation it's going to hurt. It's just going to be our own curiosity. For instance, with the flight over Pennsylvania, was the cockpit storm? What happened? What was the struggle like? Did they get at the controls? Because, you know, one thing is these were not very good pilots. When you're faced with an unusual attitude with an airplane, when it rolls over onto its side or pitches suddenly up or down, that's where the very best pilots can recover, and these guys clearly did not. Another thing is that when you looked at that second plane go into the World Trade Center, its nose was dropping rapidly, which is the sign of a poor pilot, because it means that they're not making a coordinated turn, holding that nose up as they go into a turn. And thirdly, you know, they couldn't hit anything but the Pentagon and Washington because they were poor navigators. They couldn't even find the White House. One interesting reason that they probably hit the World Trade Center is that the best of all these flight simulators you can buy and put on your PC has the World Trade Center, has a complete 3D mock-up of New York.
Really?
And it allows you to actually go and try to hit it again and again. Now, I tried this just the other day, bought both of these programs, and as a 7,000-hour pilot, first couple of times at 600 miles an hour, I had a difficult time. But imagine having the preliminary flight training in Florida, and then going off to some third country and practicing again and again and again with rudder pedals and a stick on a PC with a $34.95 program, which is the very best rated of all of the PC simulators. Also an interesting note, Geraldo, you know, we wondered why there were so few people on these flights. Well, I checked with travel agents today, and it turns out that over the 20-year history, for instance, of Flight 77, they're out of Dulles, that's a flight that historically, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, has a very, very light load. So without a whole lot of research, they were able to determine that these 4 flights, historically, this time of year, those days of the week, just don't have a lot of passengers on them.
You know, in that regard, David Hackworth, Colonel Hackworth, I've always been of the opinion that when you get mugged, you've got to fight the mugger. And why didn't all of the passengers on all these flights get a couple of guys together to face these hijackers with the carpet knives? But hearing that there were 5, sometimes 6 on board, and you know how those coach seats are, you know, some big strapping lacrosse player in the middle seat in coach is not going to have a whole lot of freedom of movement to get up and jump one of these guys. And even if he did, as apparently they did, 2 of these fellows did fight in the Pennsylvania crash, you know, that's where I think the diabolical cleverness, they knew that they needed manpower, they needed muscle up there. And I think even if there was a heroic attempt to thwart these hijackings, obviously the result would be the same.
It's pretty hard to say, to be in the mind of those who did that heroic act, if that was the case. My wife told me that if we were together, she would have ordered me to go ahead and do it. And knowing her, I would have executed that order.
Right, I know that.
Back to Pakistan for a moment.
Go ahead.
I'd like to say that when you fight a war, you have to understand your enemy. And as a student of warfare and knowing a bit about Afghanistan and knowing a lot of Afghanistan soldiers, they are the toughest mothers in the valley. Yep. You ask the British Empire, they booted them out. And as you mentioned earlier, they booted the Soviet Union out. And as Norm Schwarzkopf said earlier, you know, it's a terrible battlefield. So we want to really be reluctant, even if, as General Traynor says, we can muscle our way into using Pakistan as a launch base. We want to be really very careful that we don't find ourselves in that kind of attitude we were in 1965 in Vietnam with those little guys, they cannot put us down. And we went in there and really went at them heavy duty. We put more bombs on Vietnam, which is about the size of California, than we used in all of World War II with a factor of 7, and we still lost. So I think we want to be very, very careful before we jump in with a military solution.
I agree in that sense. I mean, bombing Afghanistan back into the Stone Age would be fruitless. They're already there. They are. All right, I have General Bernard Traynor staying on board, Steve Emerson, Colonel David Hackworth, and various correspondents will be joining us over the course of the next half hour.
Ronaldo, can I come back on the point that Hack just dealt with?
General, if you give me a minute, I will lead the bottom of this segment. We have now, ladies and gentlemen, something special to look forward to. Lieutenant General Bernard Traynor, now at the JFK School of Government at Harvard University, will be giving us the benefit of his expertise right after this short break. Stay tuned.
Nobody takes you inside the markets like Maria Bartiromo.
I'll tell you what I'm hearing. You'll see what happened the previous week, why, and what my sources say will happen now.
Among the highest number of graduates in computer science and engineering in the country, over 4,700 graduates in computer and information sciences, over 5,000 graduates in engineering, including chemical and bioengineering, and they all graduated from the same place. Just who produces this kind of talent for the workforce each and every year?
Pennsylvania.
I remember 20 years ago how they turned the racing world upside down. First by introducing a race car with quattro all-wheel drive, and second by having a woman drive it.
Over the years, we've gathered some of the brightest stars in insurance and investments, plus some of the brightest stars in securities brokerage and financial services, and we put them all together into one extraordinary company. Today, that company has a proud new name, Prudential Financial, growing and protecting your wealth.
I see your house doesn't have the Sloman Shield. Aren't you scared?
Getting scared?
What's the Sloman Shield? An advanced home security system installed free, guaranteed. Call 1-800-ALARM-ME.
Burglars pass by the Sloman Shield?
Wouldn't you? Knowing your family's protected by the Sloman Shield?
I'm not scared anymore.
What's the number?
1-800-ALARM-ME.
Installed free. Call 1-800-ALARM-ME. The Sloman Shield.
Shield your home, the Sloman Shield.
That's about everything we need to close this equity loan. If you'll just sign where I've marked these pages.
Great. I really appreciate you coming by.
Miss Cooper, it's not at all uncommon for us to visit our customers in their homes, if that's best for them.
Yeah, I know.
This is something we do for lots of customers.
Yeah, I know.
Good.
Your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
Having put the nation on a war footing, President Bush tonight in the war zone.
USA! USA!
He arrives by helicopter, Marine One touring Lower Manhattan, fighter jets flying escort. Taken to Ground Zero, where the smoke still burns the eyes and the images burn one's soul, Mr. Bush sees firsthand New York's Twin Towers in ruins. Is greeted by the firefighters, eager to hear his words.
America today is on bended knee.
By the time Mr. Bush arrives, the skies begin to clear. But it's now more than 80 hours since the first tower collapsed, and no one's come out alive in more than 2 days. Tonight, these are exhausted, weary men, their hopes flagging.
A little busted up. All the work we've been doing, but it's back there. It's there and it's in my heart. It's all that counts.
The rain that began overnight dampens spirits still more, but not their resolve. It's now muddy and slippery atop these piles of rubble, but even the injured firefighters don't rest for long.
And these men are so committed that they don't want to get off the site. So if we're not physically there to administer to them, wrap them up, fix them, and get them back, they don't seek the medical cares.
Tonight, some rescue workers admit to being worried about buildings crumbling, say their kids are scared. This crane operator carries a note from his young daughter. I like what you're doing, Dad, but we want you to come home.
Oh, God. You know, General Bernard Traynor, before you speak to the issue of staging and the extent of this military response that is obviously in the advanced planning stages already, I just read a great book, Cavalier and Clay. It reminded me that in the Empire State Building we had civilian air spotters, volunteers. They were at the observation deck looking for enemy aircraft during the Second World War. Is that what we're going to come to now? Is that what it's going to be?
I don't think so. I don't think it'd be quite like that. We do have some pretty good radar. But I have to tell you, Geraldo, I was working in as a high school student in New York, in the Bronx, when the Empire State Building was hit by a B-25 in, I think it was 1944. But if I may return to the business of a military option against bin Laden, certainly that's a difficult thing. It's a difficult area. That's kind of a last resort. But I think what this administration is attempting to do is to convince those that are harboring terrorists that there's no benefit to them. They will try to play on their self-interest. It is not in your interest. Do a cost-benefit analysis. These terrorists, or this particular terrorist that you have on your territory, he's going to be more of a problem to you than a help. And we can do this by putting all sorts of pressure on them, economic pressure, political pressure, diplomatic pressure, and to a certain degree military pressure, without bombing Kabul back to the Stone Age, which is it's already in, but by putting pressure, say, on the Pakistanis who have good connections with the Afghans, and to convince them that it's in their interest to get the Taliban to get rid of these people. And the things that we can do. I mean, we can freeze their bank accounts. We can get into their financial affairs. We can get into their television and shut it down and replace it with ours. We can shut down their electricity. All of these things. The whole thing being designed to say, in your self-interest, it is better if you get rid of these terrorists on your territory than continue to harboring them. In the final analysis, we still have the military hammer to bring to bear.
Are we going to have the resolve, really, to do this against Iran? You know, we've been trying to topple Iraq for 10 years. It hasn't worked. With Iran, the indictments against the Khobar bombing, defendants just came out, and most of the documents related to a conspiracy that was hatched in Syria.
You know, Steve, that's why I think it's the height of hypocrisy for us to look to Iran. Andrea Mitchell accurately, and she's a terrific reporter, I'm sure she's very accurate, that Colin Powell, the Secretary of State, has reached out to Iran for help against the Taliban and Osama bin Laden. Isn't that going to Mussolini to help you against Hitler?
I think that's totally counterproductive and self-defeating that it's impossible to even evaluate. I can't believe that it's a rational part of this counterterrorist doctrine. We've got to be able to basically say, as the Colonel said to our Arab friends, you're either on our side or you're not, and that means to the Saudis and the Egyptians. Stop playing footsie with Osama and his friends. Stop harboring some of the terrorists. Start extraditing the terrorists. This has to be a full court press against Syria, against the Bekaa Valley, against the Iranians.
Steve, that's very nice, but you have to have leverage to get them to do that. And that's why I'm saying the name of the game is to show that it's in their interest to do it. We cause them to do a cost-benefit analysis. In other words, the cost of them having the terrorists on their territory does not equal the benefits that they get, and not equal the cost that they're going to have to pay.
Tell me the pain that you're willing to inflict, and I'm not being critical, that you're willing to inflict on Iran to stop them from exporting terrorism today.
Well, I'm not going to talk in terms of any particular one. I'm talking about a general concept of operations, which is that you put the political, diplomatic, and economic pressure with the threat of military, but there are a lot of things that we can do electronically that will bring a nation state to a dead halt. As I say, we can shut down the electric grid, we can shut down their communications, we can take over their television.
I don't think the Taliban would care, though, General. That's
the
Taliban doesn't have television.
I remember hanging out in Peshawar and the Khyber Pass and the tribal territories up there, and my feeling is that there is no reason in the Western sense when it comes to Israel or the United States or the whole geopolitical scene. It's almost like the Taliban is a bunch of outlaws who got lucky enough to topple a corrupt Soviet-sponsored Afghani regime. Now they came out of these caves. They're in Kabul. Kabul's not much different than the caves they came out of. Not right now. They've got nothing to lose. There's no running water. They're subsisting on foreign relief packages. The civilians are the ones who are suffering. These gangsters, are probably eating caviar that comes from Iran.
And they're only surviving, and the Taliban are only surviving because of the leverage provided by Pakistan.
That's exactly right.
And
that's Pakistan, Steve, is the key to this sort of thing.
Absolutely.
You convinced the Pakistanis to put the pressure on the Taliban, and maybe some of these things that I have described are not particularly useful for the Taliban, although I would question that. But you put that sort of squeeze on the PACs and say you're either with us or against us, and if you're against us, you are going to pay. And it is not in your self-interest to continue to support the Taliban and giving the protection to Osama bin Laden.
Let me bring in another eloquent voice into this debate to join our fine panel. From Washington, James Woolsey is the former director of the CIA during the Clinton administration. He's had a distinguished career. He's previously held positions as Undersecretary of the Navy, Ambassador to the Negotiation on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe. Currently, he's with the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Director Woolsey, do you believe that the state of our intelligence is such that we are prepared to mount the kind of massive effort the president is alluding to against whomsoever is harboring, supporting, aiding, and abetting Osama bin Laden?
We need some improvements. I think it's not a fair jibe to say that what happened on September 11th is the fault of intelligence failure overseas. Much of what took place may have been, the people who did it may have been in the United States for some time, and our foreign intelligence, of course, doesn't spy inside the United States. But nonetheless, we have some deficiencies in being able to penetrate terrorist groups overseas, and some of them are self-imposed. In late '95, I hasten to say after I left, the CIA came out with some new guidelines that inhibit, they don't forbid, but they do inhibit our ability to penetrate terrorist groups with spies, because they make it harder to recruit spies inside organizations if those spies may have some violence in their past. Well, you know, that's nice and moralistic, but the only people inside terrorist groups are people who want to be terrorists. Having those guidelines would be like telling the FBI that they're supposed to penetrate the mafia, but they're not supposed to recruit any crooks as informants. So I think we need to remove some barriers on our intelligence gathering overseas, and there are some other things that we could do to improve as well.
But let me ask you this, though. Is it not a fact? I mean, you were gone, but we've certainly heard the reporting, and you have enough friends left in the Clinton administration to know whether or not this is true. Were we contemplating a strike against Osama bin Laden in the waning hours and days and weeks of the Clinton administration, and did we call it off because we couldn't be sure exactly where the punk was?
I don't know, but it sounds plausible to me. I have no inside information on that. Look, it was very hard to find ID'd inside a city, Mogadishu, where we control the skies. It's hard to find individuals when they move frequently, and to find someone who's moving every day or two in an area as big as Afghanistan would be extraordinarily difficult. Occasionally you may pick something up and have a chance, but it's very, very hard.
You know what, I'm going to pose this to the panel, but Colonel Hackworth, I want you to respond, but on the other side of the break. I have heard everyone from just chatty people on the internet to the former Secretary of State Lawrence Eagleburger say that what about nuclear weapons? And even the former Secretary of State would not preclude the possibility of using nuclear weapons in, I guess they call it this Central Western Asia here against that's one way to get in the caves and in the holes and and under the mud huts. But nuclear weapons, can we believe that this is now part of the dialogue? And how do you feel about it after this short break, ladies and gentlemen? Stay tuned. Attack on America, and the response is coming. You can bet your bottom dollar.
Monday, Wall Street goes back to work. America gets back to business. A new day for markets and investors. What more will the opening bell signal when America's financial center is up and running? Sunday night, CNBC brings you a special 2-hour business center beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern.
It takes a worried man to sing a worried song. It takes a worried
They were the greatest folk group of all time.
Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry.
Presenting the very best of the Kingston Trio.
So here we are in the Tijuana jail. Ain't got no friends to go.
All the unforgettable hits.
And I don't give a about a greenback a dollar. Spend it fast as
All
I
the
can.
folk classics.
This land is your land. This land is my land.
The great story songs.
He rode easy in the saddle. He was tall and lean, and at first you thought nothing but a streak of mean could make
Songs that touched a generation.
Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all
Get the Kingston Trio. 30 classics on 2 CDs or 2 cassettes.
Well, did he ever return? No, he never returned, and his fate is still unlearned. He may ride forever.
All the Kingston Trio hits in one complete collection.
Raspberries, strawberries, the good wines we brew. Here's to the girls of the countryside, the ones we drink 'em to.
So call now and enjoy these folk classics.
If you miss the train I'm on, you will know that I am gone.
To order the Kingston Trio, use your credit card and call 1-800-648-5252. That's 1-800-648-5252. Or send $24.99 for 2 CDs or 2 cassettes, plus $4.99 shipping and handling to the Kingston Trio, Department 3, Richmond, Virginia 23280. Or order online at heartlandmusic.com.
I said it last night to a native New Yorker. This is like watching a brother or sister whose legs have been amputated in some cruel accident. Only we know it wasn't an accident. It was a terrorist attack on the heart of the United States of America. 5,000 dead, now a realistic estimate. 4,763 dead under that rubble in all likelihood now, barring some miracle. And let's face it, a miracle will only yield a couple. You have all the dead on the aircraft, the Pentagon. And it has fueled a grim resolve in the United States, a unity to go after the bastards that inflicted this pain on us and make them pay, make them pay. But Colonel Hackworth, what about the talk of even a nuclear response now?
Well, look at the 3 bombs they threw at us. Those 3 aircraft were equivalent to 3 small tactical nuclear weapons. If I were the commander-in-chief and had to make the decision to put in Marines or put in paratroopers, knowing I would lose 1,000, 2,000 people being shot up, killed, and so on, or use a small tactical nuclear weapon if I knew exactly the confines of this base camp, I think I would be telling you, Geraldo, there would be a bit of desert that would glow for 250,000 years.
Really?
Yep. And you know, when you use the military solution, and we've seen this devastation, and you know, you want to make a point to the terrorist world, buddy, you'll make the point with thumping them with a nuke weapon if you have a clearly defined target. And I'm not saying drop it on a major city, but his base camp that BBC's been to, ABC, and I'm surprised you haven't been there,
I've been close.
is pretty well defined.
I've been close. All right, we're joined now by Lawrence Eagleburger, who served as United States Secretary of State in the first Bush administration. He's had a long and distinguished career in various diplomatic and governmental positions, and we welcome Secretary Eagleburger on the telephone from Charlottesville, Virginia. Okay, Mr. Secretary, it's a day since, or 2 days since we first spoke on this sad topic. Any reflections, any change in attitudes from your point of view?
I think not so much changed, but the one thing that has really impressed me is both the attitude and the superb performance in New York, particularly amongst those working stiffs who have been at it for so long, and also the general attitude in this United States of ours, in the sense that I think it has demonstrated to me, and I hope to some others, that we are not the wimps that sometimes we are said to be now that we have become rich and supposedly fat and happy. That's one thing that really does impress me. I must tell you, I can't tell you how proud I am of it. In terms of what we do next, I must say, I think the President and Colin Powell so far, at least in verbal terms, have had it just right. They've defined the problem. It's a war. They've said that we aren't going to go just after one person or one outfit, that we're out to stamp out terrorism. And I recognize, and your people have all said this evening, how tough that will be, but I don't think there's anything that's beyond us if we put our minds to it and keep our minds on it.
May I ask you, Mr. Secretary,
yes,
if
sir.
there is a timetable here? Is there a time? Is time the fungible commodity here? Do we risk, if we let too much time go by, losing the patriotic fervor that has managed, or is managing apparently, to put together another grand international coalition? Or does it just build the ominousness of America's might being gathered?
The answer to both of your questions is yes and no. Clearly, it can't go on forever without our doing anything. And by that, I would say to you, if we haven't done something within a month of the event, we're going to start dissipating the
Mr.
reaction.
Mr. Secretary,
coming together. But at the same time, you need to understand, Geraldo, that if we do it the way the President and the Secretary have talked about it, it's a 2 or 3 year process at best.
At least. I totally agree. I've got to take a quick break, if I may.
Yep.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
For countless millennia, we've gathered to wonder about the night sky. Now you can bring home the universe with Starry Night software from space.com. Explore planets and galaxies, discover asteroids and comets, and reach for the stars. Starry Night is easy to use. Your desktop computer becomes a powerful time machine and starship, journeying 20,000 light years into space. And Starry Night is now available at Best Buy, Electronics Boutique, and CompUSA stores. Be there for sunrise on Saturn. Investigate new worlds that could be home to extraterrestrial life. Become an instant astronomer with or without a telescope. You'll see something amazing every time you launch. Popular science says it's the closest you can come to space travel without a heavy suit and a lot of training. Starry Night, bring home the universe. It's a perfect gift for intelligent life.
If your hair is thinning, call 1-800-HAIR-CLUB now for this free booklet. The Hair Loss Resource Center, giving you the information you need to make an educated decision on hair loss. Whether you're just starting to thin or experiencing advanced hair loss, Hair Club has an option that's right for you. Hair Club, the answers you've been waiting for.
Marvin Windows and Doors understands that not everyone is the same. With more than 11,000 standard shapes and sizes and unmatched custom capabilities, Marvin is made for you. From the elegance of a French door to the revolutionary wood and clad ultimate double hung window, you'll find a design that fits, no matter how you work or play. Marvin Windows and Doors, made for you. For the complete line of high-quality Marvin products, visit Tinsman Brothers in Lumberville.
Athletes, musicians, writers, producers, newsmakers, politicians, actors, headliners.
One-on-one with Steve Harumato. TV that gets up close and personal with the people everyone's talking about. Weekdays, 4:30 p.m. Eastern only on CN8. CN8, the Comcast Network. Nominated for 24 Emmy Awards. CN8, recognized for broadcasting excellence. CN8, the Comcast Network. Tune in, find out.
On CNBC, information you need to get back to business, including logistics on transportation to the financial district, security and safety procedures, public health information, employee notices, and live phone and email question response. Sunday, 4 to 8 p.m. Eastern on CNBC.
The portrait emerging to FBI investigators, the suicide pilots lived out of suitcases, constantly on the move. 22-year-old Waleed al-Shari, one of the identified suicide pilots. For 5 weeks this year, he lived at this Boynton Beach, Florida motel, $285 a week, paying his way with a Visa card.
I'm just worried about how they get to be so close and you never know. They be right here and you'll never know nothing.
Other pilots on the FBI list stayed at the Bimini Hotel in Hollywood for a month this year, $650. The hotel manager says an anonymous man paid the bill in advance in cash.
And he said that he was looking for a room for these guys for a month because they wanted to get their pilot's license.
NBC News has obtained copies of airline tickets purchased just 6 days before the hijackings, sold to suicide pilots Saeed Al-Ghamdi and Ahmed Al-Nami. The tickets purchased at this Fort Lauderdale travel agency. The only demand, according to the travel agent who sold the tickets, the men said they had to be in Newark, New Jersey by the 7th, just 3 days before the terrorist attacks. The men paid $139.75 each to fly Spirit Airlines from Fort Lauderdale to Newark.
We get a lot of people that come up and only buy one-way tickets. They were very quiet. They just sat there. They were patient while I looked up different flights. They paid in cash, and they didn't wait for their change, and then they left.
Several of the suicide pilots used as their home addresses, mailboxes, etc., making it difficult for anyone to track them down. And sources tell NBC News, to cause further confusion, several men on the FBI list of 19 would sometimes switch the order of their names. Suicide pilot Zaid Zerahi telling some people he met his name was actually Zerahi Zaid Shahir.
Kerry Sanders, thanks. We're joined now by Yosef Bodansky, Director of the Task Force on Terrorism and Unconventional Warfare for the House of Representatives, which, by the way, at about 11:15 Eastern Daylight Time, will be passing that equivalent of a declaration of war against these pirates, these outlaws. Mr. Bodansky is also the author of Bin Laden, the man who declared war on America. You know, you see how these guys lived. You see they paid cash. You see how light they traveled. Pretty tough to nail them, isn't it, Yosef?
It is very difficult. The problem is not trying to nail the operatives once they come to the West. The issue is to deal with the sponsoring states that prepare them and send them, train them and send them and fund them and support them before they come to the West and as they come to the West.
Isn't it easier to single them out here when they don't fit into the majority culture?
Well, they haven't been noticed. We're quite a diversified society, and I think that individuals do not stick out that easily.
So what exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Bodansky?
What I'm not suggesting. I'm just pointing out that the most vulnerable point within the terrorist movement, the international terrorist movement today, are the state-sponsored training facilities. These are facilities that do not go away. They are there. People pass through these facilities, and if we want to neutralize the terrorist system, we have to go after the sponsoring states and their terrorism training, terrorism preparing infrastructure.
Let me get a final word from Steve Emerson.
Look, I think that there's no doubt that this whole issue about how to respond to the savage atrocity is going to require a multi-year response. It's going to require diplomatic, economic, political. It's going to require the resolution of being on the offense, sustaining casualties. It's going to require us to even possibly consider lowering the threshold for collecting intelligence on those groups in the United States that advocate violence, and certainly tightening up the borders to make sure that illegal aliens and those on the watch list don't continuously penetrate the United States as they've done for the last 10 years.
What Steve says, though, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, this is not going to be the same America. I had this kind of debate with Secretary of State Eagleberger. It's not going to be pretty. It is not going to be pretty. It is necessary. We have declared war. We are in a state of war. In war, you know, sometimes personal liberties have to be put aside for the national interest. I'm confident that we've got safeguards in place that it won't trample on the rights of any ethnic group, but we have to recognize that the people who did this aren't Arabs or Islamics, whatever. These are evil, murdering bastards. We're going to find them. It might take us a while. General Pete Dawkins said last night, even if we raid them in Afghanistan, that's one battle in a long war. We've got to be prepared for a long war. World War II was 4 years, 250,000 American casualties. We've got to be united in this. I just want to tell everybody, thank you very much for caring. I want to thank these rescue workers, give our support and love to the families. God bless America, everybody. We'll see you on Monday.
And counting. The new 210 horsepower supercharged Nissan Xterra. Still everything you need, nothing you don't.
Attention, Carnival has just announced incredible savings on cruises to the Caribbean. Now you can cruise for a great price or from as little as $14 a month. Stay tuned. A fabulous, relaxing, fun-filled Carnival cruise makes a great vacation, and the Vacation Store is the best way to get there. Today's Carnival is taking fun ship cruising to a whole new level. There are more choices, more pampering, and just more fun. Enjoy staterooms that are on average 50% larger than other cruise lines, plus fabulous food, dazzling entertainment, exotic ports of call, and it's all included in one low price. In fact, right now you can enjoy an amazing 7-day tropical vacation at a truly incredible rate. The brochure price for these cruises starts at $13.49 per person, but only through this special TV offer, you can enjoy 7 sunny days in the Caribbean from as little as $5.99 per person. That's over half off the regular price. You won't find a better offer. We guarantee it. And if you call now, you'll receive an extra $50 off the price of your stateroom, a double upgrade on selected sailings, and a Carnival camera. That's a bonus value worth up to $200, free when you book today. And now it's even easier to enjoy a fun ship cruise with Carnival's Fun Finance Plan. Take a 3-day cruise from as little as $14 a month, or enjoy a 7-day cruise from as little as $28 a month. A great vacation has never been more affordable, so call now for details. Or you can check out our website at thevacationstore.com. You can even book online. The Vacation Store offers an exclusive best price guarantee. If you find a lower price on the identical Carnival cruise within 14 days of booking with us, we'll refund the difference. 3 to 17-day cruises are available, all backed by our best price guarantee. Just imagine all the excitement, fabulous fun, brilliant sun, exciting ports, and sensational food, all for one low price. Or choose to cruise from as little as $14 a month. So call 1-800-361-2747 or visit thevacationstore.com. You deserve the vacation of a lifetime. Call 1-800-361-2747. Then let the fun begin.
The home of the Senior PGA Tour, CNBC.
On this National Day of Mourning, President Bush visits New York to survey the damage. After a memorial service in Washington's National Cathedral, Bush landed in Manhattan late this afternoon to inspect the damage of the World Trade Center. After touring the site, Bush spoke to the workers.
I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon. The nation sends its love and compassion. God bless America! To everybody who is here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
Meantime, 4,000 FBI agents continue their investigation as the Justice Department released the names of the 19 suicide hijackers. This morning, the United States Senate passed a resolution authorizing the president to use all necessary and appropriate force to fight those who carried out Tuesday's attack and those who harbored them. Bush has approved the activation of 35,000 military reservists. Tonight, we'll get the latest on Bush's trip to New York, the status of the FBI manhunt, and the nature of the coming war. Who exactly is the enemy, and how do we fight them? We begin with Ashley Banfield. Ashley, thanks for joining us. That was quite a reception for the president.
was a remarkable reception. We've talked to several people who have come out and said exactly what that means to them and their work, that the president would come here and really, Chris, risk his own life because that area is so unstable. I just can't stress enough that there are still enormous towers that are of concern. I'm going to tell you something. Just about 2.5, 3 hours ago, there was another one of those major evacuations. I was told by 2 police officers, NYPD officers, that the evacuation again had to do with the Liberty Tower. And when they evac, because of that, they run about 4 blocks. So, and actually, this might have been more like 4 hours ago. It's kind of hard to keep track of time sometimes out here. But just knowing that this has happened again, and he said it's about 3 to 4 times today they had those evacs. That is an incredibly dangerous place for a very large radius. Not to mention the spot where the president was in, and that's the crater, so to speak, of where Tower 1 and Tower 2 stood. I'm joined right now by Senator Robert Torricelli of New Jersey, who also was with the delegation. Tell me a little bit about your first thoughts when you arrived at this scene.
Well, I'd read so much and I'd seen so much, but nothing prepares you. First, to stand in the heart of an American city with uniformed military personnel on patrol and to have fighter jets overhead for protection, and then to see blocks of complete devastation isn't anything that any of us ever expected to see in the United States. And it's something for all of us to remember. The destruction and devastation is beyond what anyone would commit. I'm sure George Bush did not expect to see all that he witnessed today.
How do you think the president is going to put together some of the sites that he's had? How is he going to feel about what he's seen, and what difference will this make perhaps in some of the foreign policy decisions that we're about to perhaps hear about or see?
Well, I've spent a lot of time with him in the last 2 days, and I think he's already made the right judgments. But being here today was important so that he feels confidence in the decisions we've already made. We're going to rain hell on the people who did this. Living hell. It's coming. It's going to be overwhelming. It is going to be sustained. This is never going to happen in the United States of America again. That is not to say it's going to be easy. It will be difficult, and it will take time, and it will cost lives. But if we do not, this is going to happen again and again throughout our generation. I think George Bush knows it. He has our support to do something about it. He received overwhelming support in the floor of the Senate today, and I'm glad he was here.
So many people have said that America is no longer the country it was before 8:45 a.m. on Tuesday, the 11th of September. Do you believe that America has profoundly changed, that our lives are going to change, that security will change, or do you think that America, led by this government, will go on and try to be the same country we were before, unchanged and with strong resolve?
I don't know that anybody can answer that. We certainly are a less innocent country than we were. We certainly have no illusions about our involvement in the world or our ability to separate ourselves if ever you could really have those illusions. We certainly know now we're engaged in a very long struggle. Those things may have altered, but I fear for another change that we cannot permit. We cannot allow these people to change the things we believe in fundamentally. I don't want to see any rush to changing civil liberties. We're not going to rearrange our Constitution. We're going to be careful with our lives and how we travel and how we regard each other. But no force on earth should allow us to alter the basic premises of our country. That I fear more than I fear these terrorists.
Thank you, Senator Torricelli, for stopping by, and thank you for talking to us. We appreciate it. Senator Bob Torricelli from New Jersey. I also want to play for you an interview that I conducted just a little earlier on today. And the reason I want to play it for you is because the man I spoke with, his name is Joel Grassman. He's a crane operator who's been working for the last 4 days in this area. Oftentimes when I ask people's names and what they do, they say, I'm just That's what Joel did too. He said, I'm just a crane operator. But when you hear the stories that he told me this morning, you'll realize that he's just absolutely nothing just. He's one of the men risking his life every day and coming back after a long shift of what is sometimes some of the most dangerous predicaments. Here in his own words, my interview this morning with Joel Grassman.
From what I heard, they're moving out the smaller equipment to bring in larger so they could reach over the hole and pull things out, because actually around the building itself is hollow, and they're afraid that it might cave in. So they want to reach over that area to start pulling things out.
When you're operating the crane, how do you know that those massive beams and chunks of debris that you're lifting aren't going to cause a huge problem underneath? How do they know, the people who are fixing the cranes?
They don't. That's why it's so slow and so nerve-wracking, you know, because you know there are people in there. And you know every little second you know, it costs somebody their life, and then, you know, the alarms are going off, they tell you to run. It's like, it's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it.
It's a really unstable and dangerous situation down there, and your family knows that. How do you reconcile what you're doing with your kids and your
Well, that's
life?
just it. I tell them that I'm not really doing it, so they feel a little more secure. But then they see me on TV, and they see me in the news. They see, you know, and then I go home and they're like, a little freaked out.
Show me what your daughter made for you.
Yeah.
She made you bring this with you today?
Yeah, she was so upset. She made me this. It says, I like what you're doing, but we want you to come home.
Just one of the stories from down there. I just have to end on this note. With regard to how dangerous it is, again, I've just been told by 2 police officers from NYPD that within those 3 and 4 evacuations, the last evacuation, a policeman was trampled. This is an eyewitness account. A policeman was trampled. They don't know the extent of his injuries. He was hustled into a police cruiser and taken out of here. And another worker was also trampled, and they ended up seeing him afterwards with his arm in a sling, but he was not evacuated after that. Chris, back to you.
Ashley, there's 4,700 people missing. Were there any found today alive?
No, and it's very important to stress that even when you do hear these reports from some of the rescue workers, some of the National Guard members, and also some of the NYPD and firefighters who come by, sometimes they're referring to the same rescues, and they're hours and hours apart because the shift changes are every minute. Everyone is on a different schedule here. They're coming in and going at a constant rate. So 3 people will come by and say, I heard about a rescue. I heard it was a woman. And then 6 hours later, someone else is going to say, there was a rescue. And you don't know that they're the same ones. There have been no bright spots today like that. Somebody did say something about tapping this morning, but once again, it's so difficult to confirm it in such mayhem, essentially. Right. It's controlled. It is controlled at the site. Don't get me wrong. It is controlled at the site for the most part. The information is somewhat
Ashley,
sketchy.
I've been watching your reports all day for days now. They've been great. Thank you. Ashley Banfield, who's been at the site for days now. Let's go to Monica Novotny, who's at the Family Center further uptown. Monica, any good news today in terms of retrieving people?
Chris, you know, that's the word that everybody is waiting for, and it just hasn't come at this point. We've spoken to hundreds of hopeful people here, and they are checking the patient lists, but those lists are far too short. From that point, most people have to move on and then start working with the detectives who are also based here. They start filling out those missing persons reports. And at that point, the most personal details about their loved ones, the dental records, the x-rays, the birthmarks, the distinguishing features, all of those details become clues to a horrible puzzle that investigators and detectives are trying to piece together. Earlier, I spoke with one family who had a heart-wrenching story.
We can't find my little brother, Frederick John Cox. He's on the 104th floor of the second tower, just unaccounted for.
When was the last time that any of you had heard from Frederick?
I saw him when I left Monday morning from his apartment, and he liked to blow dry. And the ironic thing is that the night before we were watching a movie, it was like a Vietnam movie, and it was like you saw the war going on and all this stuff, and I had a bad day at work, and I came home, and Freddie was always the kind of person that just made you, it's like, oh, more fun, and just make you feel better. And we said, like, you stress about these little things that happen in your everyday life. And then you watch something like this and you realize that we have it so great, and it's like this, you never know. You just never know. And we were just so fortunate.
Chris, these are the stories that we're hearing. That's one example, but we just seem to be hearing them over and over again. And everybody is saying the same thing. The families who are coming out are saying they've come out because they have to, because they can't sit home, because they can't watch this on television, because they have to feel like they're doing something actively to help find that missing person in their lives. And it's so difficult to talk to them, and you feel for them. I also want to point out on another note that in addition to the family members that are here and the volunteers, also We're seeing people from the government. We spoke with the First Lady of New York, Libby Pataki, earlier today. We also spoke with the New York State Health Commissioner, Antonia Novello. And one of the things I asked her about on a different note was the asbestos, because a lot of New Yorkers have been concerned. We have heard confirmation that there is asbestos at the core of Ground Zero. We've seen the smoke as it's been coming in plumes, and it's been blowing all the way up uptown in New York City. A lot of people are concerned about that. I asked Ms. Novello about that. She says it is not a concern. She says absolutely they have measured, and there is nothing for New Yorkers to worry about at this point. She says they've also tested the water. So another note for New Yorkers out there who are concerned about that. They're keeping an eye on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Monica Novotny. Let's go right now for the latest on the investigation with Dan Abrams. Dan, what is the latest word on finding these people involved in this horror?
Well, Chris, the latest on finding them is that the FBI is conducting a nationwide and with the assistance of other countries, an international search. A number of people have been detained in European countries, from England to France, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, the Philippines. People detained in all of those countries, but unclear as to what connection, if any of them may have had to the bombings. But there's another angle to this, and that is not just to find who did this, but to prevent it from happening again. Now, you have the names of 19 hijackers that have now been released. 5 of them on 3 of the planes, 4 on another plane. We've also learned some information about them. A lot of them seem to have spent some time in Florida. At least 5 of them lived in Florida at one point. At least 3 of them trained at a flight school in Florida. So no question that the focus of this investigation, I shouldn't say the focus, but at least part of this investigation is going to be focused on the state of Florida, trying to find friends, associates, neighbors, credit card receipts, phone records, anything that will give them a sense of who else might have been involved. These guys are dead. Now the question is, who else helped them? That's what they're looking for. And there's another interesting angle. This the Associated Press reporting now that Atlanta may have been a target of the terrorists. That's all we know. We don't know anything more about how they would have gone about achieving that. But the Associated Press saying that through interviewing various people who knew the hijackers and some of the others, it seems, according to AP, that Atlanta was also supposed to be a target in one way or another. So information
Dan,
how
did these men, the 19 of them that were killed, the suicide hijackers, how'd they get in the country?
Different ways. We don't know with regard to all of them. We do know there's speculation that some of them came in through Canada. There is speculation that some of them came in through Saudi Arabian Airlines, that they may have been working for the airline. And some of them had expired visas. No question that if you laid these guys out at immigration before this happened, a lot of them would have been booted out of the country.
Right. But the one that the thing that I found really offensive was the idea that one of them got in here, a couple of them got in here on student visas so they could learn to fly a plane to destroy us.
Well, you know, look, obviously in retrospect, it's very difficult to accept that notion. Obviously, there were no requirements on people who are teaching people to fly, which say you have to go through the following checks, you have to investigate backgrounds. Look, that may all change now, but before this happened, that simply wasn't in place.
Let me ask you about this. There's a Washington Post poll number today, which I found interesting and maybe troubling to civil liberties people in this country who are concerned about civil liberties. Do you support new laws making it easier for the FBI and other authorities to investigate people they suspect of terrorism involvement? 92% of the people want to see those laws toughened. In other words, to increase the amount of options the government has to try to find out what people are up to. What do you make of that as a student of civil liberties and the law?
Well, I'll tell you this. It's not surprising at all. People in this country want results. The problem might have been, before this happened, that the reason that the Constitution exists is to sort of battle the masses. That even if the masses want something, there are basic constitutional principles that can never be thrown out. With that said, I think that based on the current climate, there are always ways to interpret the Constitution in a way that can be favorable. Depending on what the issue is. And
well, for example, if you were, just to make a point here, a couple of historic points, we knew that if someone was involved with, say, the Bund during the 40s, you better keep your eye on them. Not German Americans, but people involved in that sort of political setting. People involved, perhaps, with the Communist Party would be people you would keep an eye on in terms of sabotage or espionage. Do you think we approach the people involved with these particular groups with the same kind of aggressiveness as we did in those days?
No, I don't think we did in the past. I mean, look, we had been, up till Tuesday, extremely sensitive about any type of profiling.
Right.
Meaning, in any way suggesting that because someone has an Arab surname...
No, but if somebody comes from that particular part of the world.
Right, no. The same point, though. You know, there has never been a